Hi all, this is Kevin Trainer, and this is my tutorial for Chapter 6 of the Zelle book, and this is for Exercise 1 of a group of exercises that I created related to Chapter 6. The ones in the book are a little too math intensive for me and don't really demonstrate all the skills that I would like you guys to practice. So here we are in Python Edu, and the file that I have open is called tutorial for exercise 1.py. And a couple of comments in the top. One, it describes the skill that we're trying to demonstrate, right? So we want to demonstrate a skill called method factoring, and we want to do it based upon the considerations of what makes method factoring, what constitutes a good job, okay? And one has to do with the size of the method. Another has to do with the thing we call cohesion, all being about the same thing. And the third has to do about binding, which the shorthand being methods should know as little as possible about the internals of each other. Okay? So the example that we're going to do is we're going to create a simple Python script to print the lyrics to the song Masterpiece, which since I put this together I realized was sung by Jessie J, but it was not written by Jessie J. I've got a text file with the lyrics, which I copied off of a fan site, and I'm just going to consider this fair use with weak attribution because we're using it for our learning here. I'm going to say when it comes to such things, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so probably if we were publishing this, we'd want to do a much better job of taking care of intellectual property rights. So why are we doing a song? Well, this is the classic thing that we do when we're learning method factoring and refactoring, because songs and poems, these are the two things that we usually work with here, have repeating parts. And one of the things that we want to do when we are properly factoring code is we want to make sure that we capture repeating parts in functions so that we don't have duplicate code. Okay? So this allows us to practice that without having to worry about math or algorithms or all that kind of stuff. We're just trying to concentrate on the general principles. Okay, so we're going to create a simple Python script to print the lyrics of Masterpiece. I picked that because it's been playing in our house a lot recently. My wife is a Jessie J fan, and I'm a recent convert, so it's getting a lot of play. And what I'm going to do is I want to do a naive, simple version. Okay, now I've been teaching you so far, and Zelle has been teaching you, that a properly arranged Python script has its code arranged into functions. And I might interchangeably say method or function here. In Python, there are two things that look and act pretty much the same. The functions, which we're learning about first, and methods, which do the same thing for objects. So methods are part of classes. We haven't learned how to create a class of our own yet. Functions are the same thing, just in a Python script. So we're going to be working with functions, right? And what we've done so far is that we put all of our code into a main, and we call that with one line that's out just in the script, kind of naked. And we only have one line of code out there like that. Well, you'll see scripts that are not that sophisticated, where all the code is just out in the script, and nothing has been factored into functions. And so we're going to start with that really naive treatment so we can see what it looks like. And then we're going to factor away from that. And we're probably never going to do that again. Okay? Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to take the text file that I have with the lyrics. And here I'm pulling it over in front of my window so you can see it. And you can see there is repetition. We have this ah stuff. We have another refrain. I still fall on my face sometimes. So there's plenty of repetition for us to capture in our factoring. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this over to the side, and I'm going to take all the text. I'm going to copy all the text, and I'm going to skip my 2 lines at the top, and I'm going to paste it. Sorry, that's not what I meant. So what I meant to do was to copy all that text, and there it is. Okay? So there were 83 lines in my text file, okay, and I had 9 lines before I started to paste it in. So that looks pretty good. All right. Now the problem is that's not proper. That's not proper Python code. We need to put that inside of print statements. Well, how can we do that? Well, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take a print statement. Let's just create an extra one up here. Okay, print parens double quotes close parens. Okay, so that's a print. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to put the first part of it before our string and the last part of it after. Now I'm going to say this will work for most lines. It won't work well for the first line because we have double quotes in our string. But let's just do that. So that did not work. And so I don't like that. So let's try again. I'm going to back up to make sure that I got all this right. Apologize for that. Okay, so let's, the text is in right. Okay, and let's put this in print, and let's start with the quote. Okay, and there's an end quote right here, so I'm going to take that out and put it in the end. Paste it here and do that. Okay, so that looks pretty good, except that this isn't going to work, and the reason this isn't going to work is that the one time you can't get away with using double quotes easily is when you have double quotes in the character string. So our standard approach to that is just to turn the enclosing characters into apostrophes, or single quotes as some people like to call them. Okay, and that ought to take care of the first one. All right, now I want you to trust me to say that that's going to work. So how are we going to do the second one? Well, the second one, we need a blank line. So that's going to look like that. Okay, and then how are we going to do the third one? Well, we're going to do print. Okay, we're going to have a double quote there and put another double quote and a paren at the end. So now I can start copying. So let's do this. So I got a bunch of these in a row. I'm just going to click, paste, click, paste, click, paste. Okay. And then I'm going to go do the end. Okay. So much pressure is the first typical line. And I'm going to go to end, paste, end, paste, end, paste. And then I've got a blank line, so I'm just going to copy my print from line 11 and put it down on line 16. Okay, so I've really done the first bunch of text. It's pretty well ready to go. It's hard to run a test of my code because I have all this stuff pretending to be Python code that's really just plain text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all those remaining lines, go all the way to the end, and I'm going to toggle them into a comment with, on the Mac here, command slash. And it looks like I didn't get the last one, so let me command slash that. Okay, so that's fine. So now I've just got a little bit of code. So I'm going to save that just so I'm sure it's saved. It looks like it'll run up here. Click the run button. And let's look at the code. Let me make it bigger. Masterpiece lyrics. And what's interesting is it doesn't seem to be doing just what I want because I have an extra double quote here. So let me go up and fix line 10, which didn't really clone the way I like it to do. And let's run the test again. And unfortunately, you have to make these bigger each time. So Masterpiece lyrics, blank line, so much pressure, why so loud? If you don't like my sound, you can turn it down. Blank line. That's working great. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put you guys on pause, and I'm going to take this approach. I'm going to transform all 83 lines of the original text that came out of the text file with a strategy like that you just saw. And when I come back, I'll have a naive version of the program that's going to print the lyrics to Masterpiece. So be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I pretty much used the strategy that I showed you. I did actually convert all the lines. I didn't convert a couple and then try to cut and paste and all that kind of stuff, which I guess somebody could do. What I'm trying to simulate here is you've inherited this bunch of naive code, and then how can you structure it? How can you factor it such that it meets the criteria for well-factored code? And this is what we would have called, when I was a lad, we would have called this a structured programming exercise, because that was the buzzword of the day, and we would be calling this either structuring or restructuring code. So what we would be looking to do in the end is we would want to have well-structured code. Okay, so let's give this a test. Okay, let's give this a run. And let's double click on this gray bar here so we can get in the whole window and make it a little bit bigger. And let's look. Does this look like the Jessie J song Masterpiece? I think it does. Yeah, very good. So there are 83 lines to that file, and it's looking pretty good. All right. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to what's kind of interesting is the word the first time you're doing it, when you're taking your work and you're putting it into methods in a favorable way. That's really called factoring your code. Okay. Once you have it factored a certain way, well, then you are refactoring it. Every time you change it, you are refactoring it. You're apportioning things into different functions in order to get the goodness that you want to have when you're done. So once we have this version, this naive simple version, I would say that, well, it's been factored in a not particularly attractive way. It does run. It's not really apportioned into any functions at all, which is generally considered a bad practice. So let's refactor it in better ways. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to refactor it so that it has a main, because this is a practice we've already learned how to do. So I want to put all the code that we see here into a main, and then I want to have a call to that main following it. So we want to only have one line of code that is kind of out in the script and not hidden inside of a function. So how could we do that? Well, we could do it a lot of ways, but there's a capability called refactoring. Okay, so let's highlight all the text we want to refactor. Okay, and we want to put this into a function. You'll recall that sometimes we'll talk about functions and methods interchangeably. And methods are simply functions that are located inside of classes. And functions are functions that are inside of some kind of a Python module like we have here, but they're not inside of a class. So this thing that we're going to do is sometimes called extract a method, but in this case it's really going to be extract a function. It's the same action. So we've highlighted all the code. We're going to right click. We're going to go to refactor and extract and method. Okay, so for our cases we can kind of use the word method and function. Those words, we can kind of use them interchangeably. Okay, in the short runs, for us, the things that we create are all going to be methods, and then at the end of the class, when we learn how to create our own custom classes, in the short run they're all functions, and in the very end we'll be creating methods as well, because we will create a couple of our own custom classes. So again, since I kind of lost that by talking over it, right click, refactor, extract, method, click. Okay, and it says, well, I have to know what it's going to be called, and of course we want to put all of our code into main, so it's going to be called main, M-A-I-N, and it has to know if we're going to be passing any parameters to main, and typically our practice is to not pass any parameters to main. So it also wants to know if there are going to be any output variables. Are we going to return any values? And no, we're not. So this is going to be a plain old just refactor the code. Don't worry about parameters. Refactoring. So we click on OK. And what do we get? Well, let's look. We get, up at the top, we get a definition for main. And then we get all the code has become indented under the function main. Okay, and then we have 2 lines skipped, which is what the PEPA guidelines like us to do, and then we have a call to main. Okay, now that's going to look a lot more comfortable to us given how we've been taught. So let's give it a right click and run it. And I'm going to make it a little bigger here so you can see that. And it's the same thing. Okay. So the first refactoring that we're going to do is we're going to be good Python coding citizens and put all of our code into a main. Okay, why can't we stop here? Well, one of the things that we want to assess when we're looking at functions is how long are they? What's their size? Okay, and this function ends on line 93, and let's collapse it here. It starts on line 10 and ends on line 93, so it's 83 lines long. How about that? Isn't that exactly how long we thought it was going to be? Well, 83 lines for a function is way too long. Okay, especially when you see what's going on it. You typically would like a function to be either like 1 page in your editor, or if you clicked on the scroll bar and went down one, you'd want it to be maybe 2 pages long. Okay, it's very hard to keep more than that in your head at the same time. Well, how are we going to solve that if we have all these 83 lines? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do more of these refactor extract methods, which are really extract functions for us, until we have things at the right size. Are we only concerned about size? No, we're not only concerned about size. We want every function that we're left with to have something that we call cohesion. Well, what's that? Well, that's everything in the function is about the same thing. Okay? All right. And we said we wanted to have what we call high cohesion, and we wanted to have low coupling. Well, what's coupling? Well, it's no 2 functions know about the details of what's inside them. Okay, so that's almost another way of saying we don't want 2 functions that are about the same thing. We just want 1 function about the same thing. Okay, we don't want a dependence of one of the functions on the other, and we'll get to that in a minute. So one of the things that is classic for coming up with functions is looking for code that is a duplicate. Okay? We don't want to leave any duplicate code behind, because if we do, 2 functions that are duplicates of each other except for the name, well, they clearly are about the same thing. Okay? And then the problem is, if we have to go to maintain the program, that we're going to have to change them both, and perhaps we'll forget. Or if there are 3 or 4 of them, like we have here, because we have a lot of refrain kinds of code, well then we only want to have 1. So the one that really stands out to me is this thing. Okay, it's really easy to tell that we have a number of these. It's there, it's there. We've kind of got something like it, but not exactly it there. Okay, so let's go out and find the first one, and let's see what we can do to extract a method or function that just has that. So highlight just the code that we want to extract into the function, right click, refactor, extract method, because that's just what they called it. Okay. And let's see what we've got. So we have a method name we're going to have to choose. Or do we have any parameters? No, for right now, we're not going to have any parameters in this code. We're not parameterizing it. Are we passing back any values, any output variables? No, we're not. Okay. Okay, so what could we call this? So let's call this, because it's a song, let's call it something like OO part. Okay. So let's call it O underscore O part. Okay. So it says the PyCharm has detected one code fragment in this file that can be replaced with a call to the extracted method. Would you like to review and replace it? Okay. Now this is the cool thing. It's already extracted the OO part, and it's extracted the function, and it's put a call to it here. But like a good little programming tool, it says, I think I have another one. Do you want to go look at it? Well, we do. We want to factor all the OO parts out. So let's click on yes. And it shows it to us again. Okay, yeah, that looks like the same thing. Do you want to replace this occurrence? Yeah, replace. Okay, so it's put it in two parts, two OO parts. And where did our code go? Well, there should be a function down here. Oh yeah, there's a function called OO part. Very nice. So every time we factor out something, every time we do a refactor, we want to run a test. So let's run this again. And let's expand the window so it's a little bit bigger. So we have our two OO parts, and they look like they're in the right place. And we didn't kind of accidentally get this last OO part, which is different. Okay. All right, good. That looks fine. So here's something about this refactoring. Once you have one expression of your code, the first one, well, that's probably said it's been factored. Now, hopefully for you and me, the first time you write your code, it's going to be factored into methods in a little bit more sophisticated way than we had our first expression of it. And then every time you go and extract a method or something like that, or in our case, extract a function, you refactor it. The theory of refactoring is you never change what it does. Okay? What you do is you're really reorganizing your code. Okay? So, and in fact, the way that it solves it, it's solving it through printing. It has a duplicate code. So we got rid of duplicate code by extracting a function. That's a refactoring. So when we test it, we should get the exact same results. That's one of the parts of refactoring. Okay, so let's look for another one. Okay, what else do we seem to have that repeats? Well, here's one that looks kind of promising. I still fall on my face sometimes, and I don't know about you, but of course I can hear the song going in my head. So I've got that once there, and I see it again a second time, and I see it kind of a third time, but again, it's been kind of customized. It's got some follow-on each of the lines. So I'm thinking we're going to be able to factor out two of those for right now. So let's go find the first one. Okay. And highlight just that code. And again, we're going to do the refactor thing. Refactor, extract, method, even though this is more properly a function. And it wants a name for it. Again, we're doing the same thing. This is just printing text, so we're not passing in parameters. We're not calculating some kind of answer and passing values back. So we just have to pick a name. So, and I'm going to call this fall on my face part. That'll help me remember the code that's in it. And this is how should we name our methods? Well, we should feel free to have them be, without being extremely verbose, they should be descriptive. And look what happened. The refactoring feature said, oh, I detected one other code fragment that I believe is the same. Do I want to review and replace it? Of course I do. Let's say yes. Okay. So here it is. It's down below the little it's down below the little dialog box. Yeah, that looks like the right code. Let's click and replace it. Okay. And again, the inserted code, just a call to a fall on my face part. And then if we go down, we see that we have extracted fall on my face part. Now, something that happens here is that depending upon the tool you're using, when they extract a method for you, sometimes they'll put it after the last of your methods. More typically, they do exactly what we've done here. They put it right before. Okay. If in fact you don't like it in that spot in terms of the way it's organized, you can always cut and paste it. And cutting and pasting it at another spot, assuming it's a proper spot, that's a refactoring as well. Okay. All right. Well, that looks good. So let's see. It's getting shorter, right? Let's see. I got a road and I walk it alone. Do we have that? Nope. Don't see that one. Oh, here's one that was really close, right? Here's one that was really close, but it didn't quite do it. It's just, she has a yeah at the end of masterpiece, masterpiece, right? And, oh no, it's not the same. It is did it. It's got some things that are common, but it's not there. Okay, we've got some commonality, but not all commonality. Okay. Okay. Now, how long is it now? Well, let's collapse it over here with this little icon in the minus. Okay, so we've got what, 63 lines or something like that, 64 lines. For me, that's way too long. I want something between like 10 and 40 lines. Okay, and I want them to have to do with each other. Oh, okay. Well, how would that work? Well, poems and songs are typically have verses. First verse, second verse, third verse. So let's see if we have something that kind of looks like it. It looks to me like the fall on my face part probably comes at the end of the first verse. Okay. And then it's coming at the end of the second verse. Okay. And it also seems to come at the end of this verse. Oh, okay. They don't come at the end because the OO part comes after it. Okay, so maybe the OO part is what's coming at the end. So let's try to break this up into verses. Now, how would you do that? Well, I think all the things in a verse have to do with each other because they're a verse. They're part of a chunk of the corpus or the text. So I'm going to go down here. I think the verse ends with the OO part, and I don't want the blank line. I want that to be outside of this. So I'm thinking right here. I'm thinking starting with so much pressure and ending with OO part, that's first verse. So let's refactor, extract, method, and again, we're just going to name it first verse. Wow, that shortened it up. Okay, that made it a lot easier to read. Okay, now pretty easy if we're saying a verse ends with the OO part. Let's see that this is the second verse, right? Sometimes I'd like to go just to the beginning of the print statement. Oh, let's do a whole line. No, because that's getting part of that. Let's go to just the beginning of the print. And again, let's refactor, extract, method. All right. I'm going to call this second underscore verse. Okay. That looks good. Okay. So let's say now here's where being able to factor it, where you really have to know the rules of whatever you're trying to do. Here we're trying to do song lyrics. Do I know song lyrics well? Well, vaguely. Do I know what a verse is? I don't. Okay, I'm a little bit concerned that this last bit is not the third verse. Okay, well, I can take a try at it and then I can go talk to my friends. Okay, how do I know where to put it, what to call it? Well, I'm going to know what to call it when I really understand what the context of this domain that we have, which is pop song verse structure. Okay, so I can't do a great job of it till I know more, but I'm just going to guess ahead, and I'm going to assume we're going to confirm it with somebody who knows more about pop song structure than I do. So I'm going to assume that's the third verse. I'm going to refactor, extract a method, and I'm going to call that third verse. Okay. All right. Now, doesn't that look good? So we've got the lyrics, the first verse, the second verse, the third verse. Now, I'll tell you something that I didn't do that I would typically do with code. Okay, and this is I'm trying to make the video not be too long this time. But every time I do a refactoring, like every time I extract a method or a function, I typically would test it again. Okay, now here I think I've extracted 2 without doing a test. Okay, so I've kind of gotten away from my kind of workflow of code test, refactor test, but I'm going to get back to it now. So let's do a test, then I'll be back to it. So let's run a test. And let's take a look. And I should be getting the same results, because that's what refactoring is all about. Okay, it's about restructuring the code to make it more maintainable, more readable, more understandable. I guess we'd say that the same as readable. We're not trying to change kind of how it does what it does. We're trying to do how it's structured. Okay, these are all structural changes. Okay, how it does what it does is it just issues a bunch of print statements. Okay, but that's looking good. All right, so let's shrink this, and then let's take a look at our code, and let's ask ourselves, are we done? Okay, well, I think we have improved it a lot, because if you want to understand this as a song, you run the program. Okay, and then you see the print output and you experience it. Okay, if you want to understand this as a program, you read the program. Okay, and to see that, we put out something that looks like a title, and then with some blank lines in between. We've got first verse, second verse, third verse. Okay. Well, that's a great structure to me. So the question I have is, are there further refactors that I can do? And this is where it becomes a little bit artistic, and this is where it becomes a little bit of a judgment call. Okay, I have a lot of lines that say just print on them. Okay. Okay. So, let's think about that. What could I do? Well, if I factor them out, I could give them a more appropriate name. I could say blank line, or maybe blank. Okay, so we would know it. So what's the difference between seeing a print paren and blank paren? Well, in terms of the number of statements, it's the same number of statements. Okay, so a lot of people might say, well, don't do that. On the other hand, what if we wanted to put something else in there where we wanted to separate these, that we wanted in order to get a blank, we wanted to print maybe 2 blank lines in between each of these things, and well, we would have to go in and change all the prints to print prints. So if we factored out the prints, well, we would be okay. So some people would go so far as to just take this, the print code all by itself, and try to factor it out. And let's see if that works. So we want to refactor extract method. Okay, and let's just call it blank. Blank line. Okay, let's just call it like that. Say okay. And so we've extracted that. Okay, and it says it's found 2 code fragments in this file that can be replaced with a call to that extracted method. Okay, and what I'm not liking is that doesn't sound like the right number. So we'll say yes, and it'll show us 1. Do you want to replace this occurrence? And I don't know which one it means. It probably means this one. So let's say replace. Yeah, it did. And then let's look at the last one. Let's say replace. Okay. And I look at that, and I think that works. I think that looks worse. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to undo those. On my Mac, that's going to be a Command Z. So I undid one. I undid the other. I undid the third. Okay, so that is a potential kind of a potential aggregation of common code, but it's a one for one, and most people would say, you know what, it didn't make it a more readable program, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so let's look at some of these other things. Okay, well, would we want to? Now we've got some of these things that repeat. Okay, like for instance, let's look at this OO part. Okay, we've got OO. So we've really got two things here. Now this is again where people might either refactor it or not. Now here's a place where where we're going to do it. We're going to show actually doing it here. So let's say, okay, I've got these, right? Let's refactor extract method. Okay, and let's call this, although that's interesting, it was called OO part. Okay, so let's call this an OO line. O line. It's a single line with OO. So we're going to do that. Okay, it's going to ask us, do we want the other one done? Yeah, let's do that. It shows us where it would be. Say replace. Okay. So we've got the OO part has an OO line and an OO line, and then we've defined OO line. Okay. And then let's just go and find the OA part and do the same thing. Let's refactor, extract, method. Let's call it OA line. And do the same thing here. Okay, and see if we're able to refactor it and replace it. Okay. All right. Now, what's kind of interesting is that I think this makes this a little bit harder to read. Okay? So there's a certain argument that would say that we've gone too far. Okay? I'm just going to leave it here because we backed off of the last one. So if I do this one, we're going to kind of experience this. And of course, we made this change. Let's go test it. So let's right-click and run it. And let's double-click on that console window and make that bigger. And it looks like the OOs are working fine. That's fine. Right, that's fine. Okay, so let's double click on that to make it smaller, and let's look at other things we could perhaps do. Okay, we do have some parts of our lyrics where it's the same as one of our repeating blocks of text, like either the OO part or the fall on my face part, but we weren't able to refactor them because they have extra code in them, right? So let's look at those and see if something could be done. Okay. And let's look at that. So I think in the third verse we have a lot of that stuff. Where's my third verse? That's first verse, that's second verse, that's the third verse. A lot of people don't really like them in that order, so they'll change them around, but okay, that's fine. Yeah, so we have the same lines, but then we have these parts that come after. Now, what could we do? Well, it might be possible for us to go into those lines, go into the fall on my face part, and say that we're going to pass in parameters with which you can tell, are you just going to print it plain, or are you going to have this extra bit in the end? And then I think, well, no, because we have a different extra bit on each line. Okay? And that sounds kind of kludgy to me. So I'm going to stop right there. And to tell you the truth, I'm going to stop right here. I think we have refactored this in a really good way. And so let's just run it again. Oh, before we run it again, let's do a code inspect. So we're going to do inspect code and custom scope current file. And does it like it? Well, it thinks I have a typo and masterpiece. Okay, I probably do. Matterpiece. I don't know where that is. Matterpiece. Oh, you know what? I'm the guy who typed that. So yeah, I do want to fix that. So I think what I can do is highlight this and say I want to change it. Now I don't want to save it to the dictionary. I forget how we fix these. Jump to source. So, oh yeah, there it is. It's underlined. So let's highlight it, right click, spelling, change to masterpiece. Okay, I got that fixed. And braggadocious is, I don't know if that's a proper word, but that's the way that came out. So let's not try to fix that one. That came in the text that we borrowed. Okay, so I've done kind of cleanup on this, and I'm not going to make any more changes. So let's just do one final test. Okay, run. Well, I don't know what we did there. I think we highlighted main and we tried to run it. So that was a problem. Okay, so let's close all this stuff down here. I don't know if we started the debugger. So let's terminate the debugger. Okay. One of the reasons we don't use the debugger much in this class is the skills that we're learning is we add a couple lines and then we test them. And the debugger is really good at helping you find, well, where's your problem in your code? Well, our problem in our code, because we just added a line or two, it's in that line or two. Okay, so we know by the very workflow that we use, we know where we made the mistake. Okay, that's about 80% of the value that these debuggers give. Okay, let's properly run this. Okay, run, and take a look at this and make it a little bigger. And apologies to Jessie J and her collaborators. We have her lyrics in a pretty well structured way. And let's just go back once before we're done and say, well, did we take care of these various things? We wanted to be able to demonstrate a good size in the methods. Well, certainly main, less than 10 lines long. Third verse, 20 through 39. 19 lines long. That's okay. That's certainly less than a page we see. Second verse, 42 through 58, 16 or 17 lines long. Third verse, 61 through 85. What's that? 24 lines long. That's fine. Follow my face part, about 10 lines long. OO part, it's only about 4 lines long. And these two are about 1 line long. Okay, that's okay with me. All right, now, could you argue that this OA line and OO line are too short? Okay, and we would want to, we call this pulling up the code. Okay, one is to extract and the other is to pull up. Well, I guess we could. So let's, I don't know if the refactor thing actually does that. Pull members up. So I'd say pull members up. No, we can't do it. So on some of these things, you can actually have it pull these things back in line and get rid of the functions for you. But of course, you can do this by simply copying and pasting code. So if you go too far and you think that you're too factored out, what a lot of people would say that we are, well, you just back up a bit. Okay, maybe we want an OO part that has real prints in it. Absolutely fine. So size-wise, we're fine. Cohesion, are we fine? Yeah, I think we're fine because the main really gives us a big picture of the flow of the whole program. And then the verses, yeah, they're all about that verse. So the third verse is all about the third verse, the second verse about the second verse, the first verse about the first verse. Fall on my face, it just does fall on my face. OO, it just does OO. And then the last consideration is this thing that we call, we can call it either binding or coupling. In fact, the better word for this is coupling. So I'm going to put coupling here. Coupling and coupling here. That's the more appropriate term. Okay, so things are said to be coupled if they know what's inside of each other. So if functions know what's inside of each other, and I guess the trivial case of coupling is that they contain the exact same code. Okay, although most people would say that that's a duplicate code, but duplicate code is, I'm going to argue, is a trivial case of coupling. We don't really have any coupling at all. We do have some things that we nearly factored out. These kind of lines that have the extra parts on them, the blank lines, we nearly factored out a lot of things, but we didn't. Okay, we decided that that was going too far. So in this kind of a program where we're simply printing out text, the only way for one of these things to know about the other, well, there are a lot of evil things that you can do, but probably the most a couple things that we could have would be duplicate text, and we've decided that we're at a good point on that. So now we're done. So this is factoring and refactoring functions using the principles of size, cohesion, and coupling. So appropriate size, high cohesion, low coupling. That's what we're looking for, and I think we did a good job of it here. And of course, you'll have your own song to do this on in the exercise. So bye for now.